Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the adventure Veratrim's Tribal Siege, a Storm King's Thunder adventure designed by TM Van Dalen for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, please reach out via email, Twitter, or Discord, or on my submission form at roguewatson.com. And if you enjoy this content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Now, I have played Storm King's Thunder. It is one of the I think it might be the only 5th edition adventure I've never actually formally reviewed because I was a player at the time that I would have reviewed it. But I'm very well aware of how it's constructed, being a player, but also obviously reading a lot about it after the fact. And it has a very infamous chapter that is basically just open world, go around the entirety of the, well beyond the Sword Coast, honestly. It probably encompasses the biggest single area of any of the 5th edition adventures, from what I remember. And there's a lot of opportunity to fill in those slots between when you're, doing the initial, like, oh shit, the giants are, really going crazy. And then when you're actually realizing, okay, what we have to do to complete this campaign. So it's a bunch of, like, side quests that you can fill in all that material with. And this one does tie into the wider campaign. You could really use it as just a drop-in quest anywhere. I think I can see why the designer labeled it as a Storm King's Thunder adventure, because I do think it does a cool job of slotting in, specifically if you want to start with the Triboar start, because I believe, from what I remember in Storm King's Thunder, you start in one little area at like level 1 or 2, and then you move on to one of like 3 areas. It's like Bryn Shander, Triboar, and one other place. And they're all being like attacked by giants in some way, different kinds of factions of giants. And this one specifically is a great start for if you want to start in Triboar, because it moves you out of Triboar to another area, and then that area, which is Weldon, which I believe is a town designed by this designer, because I previously did a review of their adventure that took place in this Weldon town. And then at the end of this adventure, that the different NPCs can then give you quest hints or rumors or whatever else to bring you to different areas. So in terms of how it slots into Storm King's Thunder, I think it does a pretty cool job. But don't worry about it in terms of it's labeled Storm King's Thunder. I have to, no, you can put this in anywhere. In fact, thumbs up for having a relatively straightforward, easy to run adventure that has both a dungeon and a dragon. The dragon is on the cover. There is a dragon. The dragon is the boss fight. It feels almost quaint to have an actual adventure that involves it. It feels like a very old school adventure design, because it basically culminates in a dungeon crawl with a dragon at the end. It's a kobold dungeon, by the way. It is designed for level 6 parties with some of the APL adjustments, that average party level sidebars that can go pretty much anywhere, like maybe lower half of tier 2, which feels a little high for dealing with kobolds, in my opinion. I guess it's a pretty good sized dungeon at the end. You do have to fight hill giants, which are no joke, and the kobolds do throw a lot of traps at you. But I think you could run this maybe even a little bit lower level with some, careful scaling for the DM. It starts out in Triboar, and it's a really well organized adventure. It definitely borrows a lot from the Adventurers League way of, making sure you've got plenty of the adventure background, adventure hooks, all the information for the DM at the front, and then the adventure flow, which really helps, including the fact that, hey, if you want to start in Triboar, we can work with that. And actually works best with that. Or if you want to start, okay, I guess Golden Fields the other one, Bryn Shander and Golden Fields, then simply start it, we're moving into chapter 3, Wide World, and then they'll make it to Triboar, and then they can go from there. So, but again, you can honestly have it set anywhere, and then, kind of change the adventure flow from there. If you just want to use the Kobold Dungeon, obviously you can do that as well. Pronunciation guide at the beginning, which is huge thumbs up. I wish everybody gave me a pronunciation guide. That's awesome. And grid map sizes for those of us that run on a virtual tabletop. I don't think I've literally ever seen a published Adventure in the DM's Guild provide grid map sizes for their grids, because I am pleased to announce that this does provide full color detailed battle maps, as well as a fun little town map. It's kind of a isometric, almost Baldur's Gate looking 3/4 view map, but we get actual battle maps for There's an important road encounter, which is the giants, and then there's a multi-level cave dungeon, which is that big kobold cave that culminates in the dragon fight. So, and I love the design too. It's got really short chapters, which are really easy to read through and determine what's going on. It even gives you the duration of how long these things take. And I love this like half-page art. So just amazing production levels on this entire. What are we looking at? Like 30 pages. And it's a relatively short, straightforward adventure. You could. I think it's too long for a one shot. I believe the designer actually says, hey, probably break this up into maybe 2 different sessions at least, because the road thing is built into it, which you can roll your eyes at, like, oh, it's another road caravan escort mission, and yes, it kind of is. And it's also got a dragon attacking a village. It's not a whole lot of original ideas, which not every adventure has to have, these complex, antagonists and these plans you have to unravel and these mystery investigations. This one is not really that at all. It's very much more straightforward, probably better for parties, or just if you're wanting to take a break from a big, one of those kind of missions and just do more of a straightforward, like, hey, there's bad guys attacking, or you need to escort this thing while bad guys come at you, or there's bad guys attacking a village and you need to go deal with them. It's, relatively straightforward in that way. I do like that we have scripted encounters, so it's not just a table of like, hey, you're coming across 1d4 plus 3 wolves. Instead, it's, bandits who are on tough times. Poor bandits. Because there's also, hill giants robbing everybody, so they're trying to rob the players. And there's lore building stuff. You can come across fire giant pits, or a traitor who's been on the receiving end of these giant attacks. You can have the cloud castle of Zephyros just flying overhead. All that stuff is neat. They're not combat encounters, but they do a good job of expanding the lore and tying in specifically to Storm King's Thunder if you're going to run this in Storm King's Thunder. The biggest encounter, which there aren't technically maps for that, but the one we do get a map for in chapter 2 is a pair of hill giants, which again ties into Storm King's Thunder. Hill giants are on the road, just robbing from people. This is Rug and Zog, which I don't. Like I said, I didn't technically review Storm King's Thunder, so I'm not sure, and Chapter 3 is huge anyway, which of these the designer's actually pulling directly from in terms of how, oh, this is a mention in Storm King's Thunder, versus what are they originally coming up with. So I believe all the Weldum stuff is original. I'm not sure about this Hill Giant checkpoint, but either way, this is actually broken down into a full-on like tactical battle map, which I appreciate. There probably could have been a little bit more tactics when it comes to Rug and Zog. I like that, it says the players, hey, the hill giants are dumb. Players could come up with some plan to separate them, or, take advantage of them. The hill giants are just interested in, they're dumb. They're just going to try to kill the players and eat the horses and everything. But I would have appreciated maybe some opportunities for social encounters, for example, and maybe give them some kind of, Zug is jealous of Rog because of this, some kind of little bits here and there that would have helped, just in case players want to approach that way. Because I think when you're coming across these hill giants and you have some forewarned knowledge of them, the players can then devise some fun plans, which is part of what's really fun to deal with in D&D. It's like they can go stealth approach, they could go a deception approach, they can go for a social approach, or they can just go shock and awe and go in and fight them. So I think just having some clues to the DMs for how to handle those different approaches would be very handy. But obviously great tie into Storm King's Thunder. So they get the mission to just bring stuff from Triboar to Weldam, and then they have those road encounters, and then they arrive in the town of Weldam, which I believe this one is an original creation from the designer, because as I mentioned, I previously reviewed another adventure of theirs, which took place in this town that is located in a forest, which I'm also not sure if this forest is one, because I looked on the map and I thought, okay, maybe this is Cryptic Garden or something, but it's called Westwood. Don't make me look up maps for where your stuff is. I hate having to do that, because I'm not on my, I guess I'm not up on my Forgotten Realms knowledge of what's new and what's not. The Weldam town is nicely expanded. There's little, different shops and stores and NPCs the players can talk to and interact with. None of it's necessarily important, so this isn't like, a hub town where you get multiple side quests or anything out of. Instead, there's one scripted event that happens when you actually deliver the goods to the trading inn, is a kobold attack, which very much feels not like Storm King's Thunder, but feels like Tyranny of Dragons, because there's literally a dragon overhead and a kobold invade this poor village, which was vastly unequipped to deal with that. I don't even think they have any security whatsoever, which seems weird because they're in the middle of a forest. But the players are there, so and the level 6 players are more than a match for a bunch of kobolds. Although it does mention the fact that they're all split up, and you can kind of deal with them. The ones that aren't dealing with you immediately are in the background. Maybe it could have been some more information about how much damage they're doing to the village or something, but it just kind of hand waves it like, look, the players can just go around and deal with these kobolds, and then whenever they have a chance, maybe they want to rest afterwards or whatever, then they can follow the tracks. The dragon weirdly just flies overhead but doesn't actually involve itself in the fight, which could be a clue to the fact that it's not actually that powerful of a dragon. It's actually a young green dragon, so it, I guess, doesn't want to risk itself. But the real meat of this adventure is the dungeon crawl, which is after that kobold attack, the players then follow the tracks or capture a kobold, whatever means they have to get to this dungeon lair, which is a pretty good-sized cave dungeon complex. And again, I appreciate that it feels like a cave. There's winding tunnels that just kind of go in random directions because that's just the way that kobolds have been mining through and excavating things. It's actually got multiple levels, and it's built into the multiple levels to where some of them overlook others, which is very a tricky thing to do with D&D because you're 9% of the time looking at a top-down like grid map, so elevations are a tricky thing. But I appreciate it when designers try and include that. So the fact that, especially because a lot of the traps, hey, guess what? Kobolds use traps like crazy, which makes them fun. This place is fucking filled with traps. So you'll have kobolds that are like up one level and they can dump burning oil or swarms of insects or something on the next level. There's collapsing ceilings. There's pressure plate alarms. They can herd swarms of rats. One of the tunnels right here, the 12A, is just a parallel tunnel where they like stab you through the wall with their daggers. Just a real pain in the ass dungeon to get through. And this map, we get a separate player version with grid and non-grid, and obviously because it's player, we don't have any of the annotations. It's a little hard to read the DM map. This is the only, I believe was that one at the end? Okay, so these are the player maps. So unfortunately, the only DM one is the one that's actually embedded, and it's actually really a little tricky to read the annotations because there's so many traps everywhere. There's like 12E right here, 12B, like little, it's important to try to learn where all those traps are, and it's kind of hard to tell. You have to really zoom in on this, and anytime I have to zoom in on the document, I have to complain about it. But there are plenty of kobolds in here, different kinds of kobolds. Weirdly, we don't get the kobold inventor, which is too bad because we are using the dragon shield, which I believe is from Tyranny of Dragons, as well as was added officially in Volo's Guide to Monsters. The kobold scale sorcerer is kind of the leader of the tribe, and I believe there's winged kobolds is the other one. So I would have at first complained about no inventor, but we're basically using all of the other official kobolds, so that's fine. I like the little D20 table of trinkets also. It basically says whenever the players meet a dead end, hey, maybe you find something laying on the ground or use this as a random treasure thing, and I think that's a fun little addition to bringing the lore and bringing the life of this dungeon. So cool ad there. There's just a lot of really neat traps to come across. There's a pressure plate alarm right before the actual dragon fight. The scale sorcerer is kind of the mini boss who runs to the boss if you set off that alarm. None of it feels particularly original, I guess, is my biggest complaint. Like nothing I was like super stunned by or really impressed with, and that feels harsh, but I guess it's, and I've reviewed a lot of adventures and stuff, right? And there's nothing in here that's really, there's no like twist, there's no surprise, there's no, for example, like even a captive here that the players can socialize with. There's nothing like that, and yet I'm not going to include any of that as a complaint because I think the production level is so good. The way it's organized, the way it's edited, it's so easy to run that I'm kind of giving it a pass for that. Like it just, honestly, the production value of the maps and the artwork and the way it's designed and laid out is elevating this above an adventure that wouldn't normally do any of that stuff. So even though it is a very straightforward adventure, that can also be an advantage, right? It's very easy to run, it's new DM friendly, and again, sometimes, especially if you're coming off a big complex adventure that was maybe very serious, had a lot of drama, you can just go through this straightforward, like, hey, we're just going through these tunnels, fighting kobolds, and at the end it culminates in a young green dragon boss battle, who I wish had legendary actions, but does have lair actions, which is kind of nice. I think a lot of cool bosses should have legendary actions. Do young green dragons have legendary actions? Should have looked that up. I don't know if they do or not. I don't think they do, but I may be wrong. Somebody will correct me. But I do like that it is layer actions. And that's the whole thing. But I do appreciate that there's a final epilogue where this is the part that connects into Storm King's Thunder, where various NPCs can then take them specifically to different areas of Chapter 3 of Storm King's Thunder, or, you know, whether that's Waterdeep or Amphail or Yartar. You know, there's the Riverboat Casino scene that we did in our campaign. So, you know, it's a cool way of really slotting itself in there. So I do appreciate, you know, it doesn't just slap that Storm King's Thunder label on there and said, hey, this is a good one for when you're in that open world. Because technically any adventure would be good for that, as long as you like mention the giant thing. But this one actually does tie in very well with there's multiple giant encounters at the beginning in that road encounter or lore building encounters. And then at the end, even though the actual main quest is, you know, not giant related directly, it's kobolds and a dragon. At the end, when you have all these town NPCs who are, you know, cheering your victorious success, they can then lead you to all these other hooks. Basically, they act as quest hooks or NPC quest givers that can then tie directly into that campaign. So that's very, very well done. So I was honestly pretty impressed, just given the production values of this adventure, even though it is a very, very straightforward you know, adventure design with not a whole lot of like twists and turns or intrigue or surprises or anything. And yet, for not doing that, I was still, you know, caught up in, I could see how much fun you could have in a dungeon crawl like this. Just if you wanted to do a pretty straightforward, you know, escort mission, which is, you know, very cliche at this point, and then a dragon attacking a town, although it's really the kobolds attacking a town on the behest of a dragon, pretty cliche, and then just a cave dungeon, pretty cliche, and then a dragon fight. And yet, I think we've come around now through all these other, you know, adventures and things I've reviewed, where something like this actually feels weirdly refreshing again in an odd way. The fact that we actually get to have a dungeon crawl and a dragon in D&D. So I'm honestly going to give mostly props to this adventure. Let's go over my pros and cons for Veratrim's Tribal Siege. Pro: it's an easy to run, well organized side quest adventure that actually features a dungeon and a dragon. It feels almost quaint now. Pro: helpful connections to Storm King's Thunder. So, you know, you don't have to run it as Storm King's Thunder. It can be just a drop-in quest. You could start it in the town of Weldom and just involve a kobold attack on a village, or, you know, whatever bits and pieces you want to use. But I think the connections actually are meaningful and helpful, especially that chapter. If it wasn't for that chapter 5, I probably wouldn't have included that as a pro, but that chapter 5 really helps include just a few sentences about, hey, this NPC can lead them here, this NPC can lead them there, and really does an excellent job of giving you those quests, because that's how my players work. My players, instead of just giving you an open world map saying like, okay, go nuts, you can just go wherever you want, that's not how I run or design my games, or want to run or design them, and that's not how my players do. My players want to have actual quests to go to certain areas and do certain things, and this one gives you that opportunity to then seed all those quests on the map, or just certain ones. If you want to specifically bring your players to the next area, you know, you want to bring them to Amphail, then, which is, I believe, very close by, then just give them that one NPC quest. So that works very, very well. Pro: several full-color detailed maps with grid and gridless versions for players. Super thumbs up on including excellent, excellent maps, especially for the pretty large-sized dungeon. Pro: APL adjustments for major combat encounters. It does feel a little easy for level 6, and yet you can adjust encounters, not for every single encounter, but for most of the major ones. It does include those APL adjustments, which is very helpful. And Pro: professional layout and design with evocative art on nearly every page. Honestly, the production value just really works for me and really helped sell this entire module. If it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't have given this one, won't be giving this one such high praise, but that goes a long way with me when you include, you know, this nice full page artwork, when you have these really great, you know, chapters that break up the action, and, you know, it's perfectly edited, everything. The production value is just really, really impressive, and that honestly should go a long way with everybody. Cons: I got nothing. I had little nitpicks here and there, but nothing major that I would include as an honest con to this adventure, so perfect marks from me. Final verdict: a dragon attacking a village isn't the most original adventure idea, but Veratrim's Tribal Siege is a satisfying drop-in side quest thanks to high-quality maps, excellent organization, and a well-designed kobold dungeon crawl. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.